Hey everybody, welcome to the video. It's Monday, June 28th, and we're breaking down this 9-game main slate that we have over on DraftKings today. Typically, I like these slates within like 6 to 10 games, so I think this is a perfect slate size, and it's pretty good for the offenses. But as for the pitching, there's some good spend-up options. There's absolutely nothing down low to look at. Like, yes, I have Kenta Maeda here versus the White Sox. I don't feel very good about that, but I didn't want to put just 3 10K guys here just to leave you hanging. So I threw Maeda in here as a mid-range pitcher, but to be honest, this is looking like a double spend-up pitcher slate for me because I have absolutely no confidence in any of those cheaper pitchers. Maybe we can take a shot on Maeda. We'll look at the matchup here, break that down a little bit, but it's looking like it's going to be a top-heavy pitching slate today, and we're going to have to find some value in the bat. That's something certainly we can do today, so I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue. But if you find this video helpful in any way possible, please leave a like down below. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. You can follow me over on social media if you want to, using the handles in the bottom right corner of your screen. And if you want to help support the channel over on Patreon, link is down below in the description. And since it's the end of the month, if you do sign up, you can get these last few days free. Then I'll hit the refund button for you as long as you continue your patronage throughout the month of July. But you get the projections, optimize your ownership projections, rankings, cheat sheets, data sheets, Discord community, all that fun stuff. Link is down below. But I think that's pretty much it for the plug. So without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And as per usual, we'll start with the pitchers, then move on to the bats. And like I was mentioning in the intro, there is really nothing down low that I like. Yes, I listed Kenta Maeda here just to try to break it up a little bit, but even then, matchup's not very good, and his numbers haven't exactly been out of this world this season. Definitely a drop off from what we saw last year. So it's looking like it's going to be a double spend up at the pitcher position today, but there's plenty of value to make that work, so I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue. We can still get some good bats mixed in there as well. But we'll start up top with Trevor Bauer, nearly $11,000. I wouldn't say he's my favorite pitcher today, just point per dollar wise, but raw points wise, he's always going to project out very well. The thing I don't love here is the matchup versus the Giants. I'm not one to typically look at records because I only care about the fantasy perspective of baseball. Obviously, I like baseball in general, but I don't really care about the records too much outside of the Indians or the AL Central because that's my team. But the Giants have been very good this season. Like, they are winning games, and versus righties, they've had a decent amount of power this season. And Trevor Bauer is giving up over I think he's right at 1.5 homers per 9 this season, allowing over a 32% hard contact rate. So maybe he'll give up a homer here and there. But they do have a nice 26% K rate, which does kind of match well with Trevor Bauer's 30+% K rate. But the numbers are kind of scary here. 195 ISO, nearly double-digit walk rate, over a 320 OBP, about a 330 WOBA, and a 111 WRC+. I mean, it's not the most hitter-friendly park in LA, but a little bit scary there. But a 3.45 implied team total against him. Heavy favorite, AK prop. Always goes deep into the game, 105 pitches per game, which is the one thing I love about Trevor Bauer because you never have to worry about a short leash. And even if he does get beat up a little bit, give up a couple runs, usually the innings can kind of make up for that a little bit. Plus, he's got over a 30% K rate this season. ERA 2.5, xFIP below 4, CR below 3.5, 31% K rate, actually close to 32%, less than a 200 batting average given up, 1.5 homers per 9. I don't like the hard contact rate, sitting at nearly 33%, but he should be just fine raw points wise. I wouldn't say he's my favorite pitcher just point per dollar wise for the spend up guys, but just raw points, he's always going to grade out well. So if you got the money for him, I think he's a fine option. Freddie Peralta, $10,500. I would say he's my favorite pitcher of the slate, definitely my favorite spend up. Love his strikeout rate. The matchup versus the Cubs is pretty good. Yes, there's a couple good bats in the lineup, but they're also going to strike out quite a bit. Their numbers aren't nearly as good as the Giants are versus righties, and he also has the lowest implied team total against him at 3.2. Still a favorite, not quite as a heavy favorite as Trevor Bauer, but 8K prop. And looking at his numbers this season, pretty darn good, man. Not a lot to complain about. The walk rate's really the only complaint here, but everything besides the walk rate and the 50% fly ball rate is pretty good for Freddie Peralta. 34 batting average allowed, 126 ISO, only a 27% hard contact rate, less than a homer per 9. And if you're looking at the Cubs splits versus righties this season, yes, they have a little bit of power at 176 ISO, but a 26.5% K rate, less than a double-digit walk rate, 92 WRC+. What was it, 300? But for these other teams and other matchups here for the pitchers, it's not the most terrible thing in the world. Lots of shades of green here. So Freddie Peralta, my SP1 on the slate, would definitely play him in cash games. Then Lucas Giolito, $10,300. He gets a, I wouldn't call it a good matchup. I wouldn't call it a terrible matchup versus the Minnesota Twins. Yes, they have some, they got some good boppers in the lineup like Josh Donaldson, Nelson Cruz, but can overpower this lineup. The guy is just a pretty darn solid pitcher, definitely an ace. 3.6 implied team total here for the Twins, nothing too out of this world. And looking at Giolito's splits this season, they're going to look pretty good. 30.9% K rate, does walk some guys, but kind of all these spin-up pitchers do have a bit of a walk problem, but it does come with over a 30% K rate, so I guess we can't complain too much given the slate we have. 3.5 xFIP, 3.4 Sierra. Does give up some power. over 200 ISO this season, which I don't love, and close to 2 homers per 9. So there could be a bit of a home run issue here versus the Twins, maybe with guys like Nelson Cruz and Josh Donaldson, Max Kepler. But I still think he's going to be fine because it's Lucas Giolito. He's got strikeout upside. He's pitching at home. I think he could pick up the win here. It's going to be close, though, because Kenta Maeda's not a terrible pitcher. But I think the White Sox offense should be able to do enough for him to pick up the win as long as he can go the 5+ innings, which shouldn't be too much of an issue. I just don't love the matchup here, just strikeout-wise. Like, they only strike out 22.9% of the time versus righties. Do have an ISO close to 200, OBP almost at 320, and a WRC plus above 100. But again, the pitching slate today is not great. Like, if we look at the other options, we're talking about Anthony DeSclafani versus the Dodgers. We have Maeda versus the White Sox, who I do have listed here, but it's something I am super confident in. We have Danny Duffy versus the Red Sox. I hate that. Garrett Richards versus the Royals. Maybe you could look at Richards, but his strikeout rate's below 20% this season. So, like, there is nothing to really work with down low. And even the spend-up options outside of Freddie Peralta don't look that enticing. So it's a pretty gross pitching slate, but I mean, we have to work with what DraftKings gives us on any given day. So that's kind of what we're doing today. But Giolito, points-wise, should be fine. Could get around 20 points, which, given the slate, I think is okay. Then if you're looking at a cheap SP2 today, Kenta Maeda is probably your best bet. But even then, I don't like the matchup versus the White Sox. Last time he faced them, he only scored like 7.7 points. I believe that's what it was. And there's a lot of tough bats in this lineup, a lot of tough outs. So again, I'm not excited, but he does have a 4 xFIP, low 4 Sierra, which is not bad given the other options in this price range. Anthony DeSclafani would be enticing if he wasn't playing the Dodgers, but since he's playing the Dodgers, I'll just probably pass there. Over a 20% carry, doesn't really walk too many guys. Gets a decent amount of ground balls, 42% ground ball rate. Giving up close to 2 homers per 9 this season, though. Again, it's kind of a scary spot here versus the White Sox. But it's better to be a righty versus the White Sox than it is a lefty. So that's like the one positive thing from Maeda here. And they only have a 136 team ISO versus righties this season. And that's the Chicago White Sox and a 24% K rate. So there's a couple of things that make me want to play Maeda here just because of the price tag. But just know there is definitely some trouble here if you do roster him and don't expect the greatest thing in the world here. Plus, he hasn't exactly been working super deep into the games this season, averaging 80 pitches per game. My plan is to double spend up. If I can't, I don't hate getting down to Kenta Maeda, but there is really nothing down low that I like today. But with that being said, I think that'll be it for the pitching. So let's move right over to the bats, which in my opinion are a lot more fun to talk about today. Because usually when there's not a lot of pitchers to talk about, that means there's a lot of good bats, and that's exactly what we have today. And as always, we'll start with the catcher position. I don't think there's anything wrong with Salvador Perez up top, but Gary Sanchez is a little bit cheaper, and he's been swinging a hot bat recently. And his ISO this season is now above 250. The batting average is still pretty low, but it has risen a little bit. It's now close to 240 with a 357 WOBA, and like I just mentioned, his ISO is getting up there. And we always know he's had power, just doesn't typically have the best batting average. He will strike out quite a bit. But Dylan Bundy hasn't exactly been great recently. And the New York Yankees do have a team total of 5.5 today, so I definitely think they're in a pretty decent spot here versus Dylan Bundy. He is a guy that can give up some power, and I like the power upside from Gary Sanchez. And obviously this lineup's got a lot of right-handed power. Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, Luke Voigt, and I think they're all viable plays today. Christian Vasquez, $3,900, just kind of a cheap part of that Boston Red Sox stack. I know his numbers haven't been super impressive this season. The batting average isn't terrible for a catcher at 265. The ISO is below 100, but I'm still liking all these Red Sox righties here versus Danny Duffy. I mean, they have a team total close to 6 today. They're playing in Fenway, which is a hitter-friendly park. Obviously, they're at home, so you don't get those guaranteed nothing at bats, but I still think they're awesome options today. The Martin Maldonado, $3,000. This is just purely the strategy of rostering the cheap catcher on pretty much the best offense on the slate. I know his overall numbers aren't good, but you can just get a cheap exposure to the Astros tonight. If you can afford some of the big bats, I think that makes sense. And Astros are in a great spot here versus Eshelman today. Unfortunately, they're not in Camden Yards this time. So again, like the Red Sox, you don't get those guaranteed nothing at bats. And for the Astros, it's definitely a part downgrade going from Camden to Houston. I mean, I feel like they played the Astros for like 2 weeks in a row now, and we're just continuing it because they keep getting great matchups. But Eshelman is not a very good pitcher. He struggled in his last start versus them. It's a bit of a park boost for him going to Houston, but I mean, the Astros should be just fine here, and their team total above 6. Definitely like all the Astros today. Dropping to first base, we have Yuli Gurriel, $5,200. Just a good overall hitter. Like kind of like Michael Brantley, where he hits for a high batting average. Doesn't have the most power in the world, but it's pretty respectable. He's at a 186 ISO, 155 WRC plus an OBP right below 400. So you can fit Yuli Gurriel in. Great. It doesn't feel that great spending nearly $5,000. Well, I mean, you are spending $5,000 for him. It doesn't feel great spending that much money for him because there's some other expensive options that I feel like have a little bit more upside. But the guy's just a purely good hitter. I mean, kind of like Michael Brantley numbers, and I play Michael Brantley pretty much every single slate. He's just a little bit cheaper. So But I do like Gurriel quite a bit here if you can fit in any of the Astros. Luke Voit, $4,700, just power righties here versus Dylan Bundy. Obviously, lefties make some sense as well. But the New York Yankees lineup is just super righty heavy, so that's kind of the only thing we have to work with. But do like Voigt's power upside here, and the price is a little bit lower than Gurriel. And then Paul Goldschmidt, $4,500 versus Jake Faria, and then the rest of the Arizona bullpen. I'm thinking the St. Louis Cardinals could be a good contrarian stack today. And I say contrarian, I know their team total is above 5, so it's not like they're going to be like super overlooked, but given the other offenses we had today, the Red Sox should be chalky. The Astros are going to be chalky. The Yankees are going to have some ownership just because of the Yankees. And I think the Mets, some of those lefties in that lineup will be decently popular. So I feel like the Cardinals could get a bit overlooked, and they're in a pretty decent spot here. I mean, I'm not scared of this Arizona pitching staff today because I don't think Faria is going to obviously go very long. He doesn't really pitch deep into games by any means. And they have a team total above 5 here. So, I think the Cardinals make some sense. And if you're looking at the Arizona bullpen this season, their team xFIP is sitting at close to 4.8, which is not that great. So once Faria gets out of there, I don't think it should be a problem for the Cardinals. So I think they actually make for a decent contrarian stack today. And now Goldschmidt's numbers haven't exactly been the greatest thing in the world this season, only batting 253 with a 165 ISO, but I do think there's some upside there, and he's not overly expensive. And then dropping out of second base, Jose Altuve, $5,800. You're probably not going to be able to afford him today. I would rather spend down for second base just because I think we're going to be spending up our pitcher today, so we're going to have to save some money here. But if you happen to have the money for Jose Altuve, just raw points-wise, he's the best second base option, batting around 300 this season with a 225 ISO. Eshelman, he's not a very good pitcher, so yes, use all the Astros that you can today. But the guys you're probably going to be with in cash games, Michael Chavis here and Jeff McNeil. The cool thing about Chavis here, you can also play him at first base, so I would expect him to be one of the chalkier plays today because he's on a team that has a team total close to 6 today, like all the Red Sox here. Ready on the matchup, should be leading off. I think he makes a ton of sense today. Would probably be close to a cash game lock in my opinion because you can play him either first or second. So I love him quite a bit today. Jeff McNeil, $3,500, and that's probably one of the reasons why you're going to play Chavis at first base because the options I listed at first base are all pretty expensive. But we're going to probably have to save some money today. So why not just move him over to first, and you can play Jeff McNeil here, leading off $3,500 versus Espino, who I think the Mets lefties are actually in a pretty decent spot today. There's no team total out yet, but I don't think it's going to be anything super low. And Jeff McNeil, just kind of a solid hitter, $3,500. I know he doesn't have a ton of power, but he can make some contact. I know he's not doing a great job of that this year, batting $235, but I like the price point, I like the spot in the order, and he's just one of those ways where you can fit in the expensive pitchers today. And dropping out third base looks like a good position to spend down on. Again, like I said, I gave you guys expensive pitchers, but I'm also, there's a lot of value bats here as well, so I think we can make this work today. But we have Gio Urshela at $3,600. Not the most exciting hitter in the world, but batting 270 this season with a 170 ISO. Like the Yankees here versus Dylan Bundy. It's just kind of cheap exposure to that offense. So Gio Urshela I think is in a decent spot, even though he doesn't hit it in exactly the greatest spot in the order. Abraham Toro, $3,500. Kind of just trying to get cheap exposure here to the Houston Astros. I played him for felt like about a week in a row when he was like $2,000 and the price steadily rise, but I was just trying to get as much exposure to the Astros that I could, and I'm going to be trying to do the same thing tonight. $3,500, a little bit expensive for the 7th hole hitter, but still, I mean, if you can just get cheap Astros exposure, I don't have any problem with that. Then Asdrubal Cabrera, $2,500 versus Wade LeBlanc. So last time he was pitching, I think he only threw around 30 pitches, so we can't expect him to go too deep into this game. But the good thing here for the Arizona Diamondbacks, if you're looking for another contrarian stack, another team total is below 4 here, but their bullpen hasn't been very good this year. I was mentioning on the opposite side of this game where the Arizona Diamondbacks bullpen sitting at like 4.8 for the team xFIP. The Cardinals are sitting at 4.9. So if they can get to Wade LeBlanc early, I think the Diamondbacks could be a very, very sneaky contrarian stack. Nothing I would do in cash games besides maybe Asdrubal Cabrera because of this really low price point. And you could also play him at first base too. So there's plenty of cheap bats to make today work if you want to spend up for pitching. But Cabrera, I mean, his numbers aren't great this year, only batting 225, 156 ISO, but the price tag is what draws me in, and he should hit in a decent spot in the order, so I don't hate his dribble here. Dropping a shortstop, we have Carlos Correa, $5,300. If you can afford him, great. The numbers are good this year, batting 305, 402 WOBA, 235 ISO, 162 WRC+, and it's pretty good versus righties, but I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but love all the Astros. Xander Bogaerts, $5,000. He's having a great season, too. Both him and Correa have been awesome at shortstop this season. And they also have very, very similar numbers, both batting above 300. Both have a WOBA right around 400. ISO in the upper 220s, and Correa is in at 235. WRC plus 153. I mean, their numbers are very, very similar. And Bogaerts is a little bit cheaper. He gets the righty on lefty matchup here. I just prefer the Astros more, but Bogaerts is a little bit cheaper if you get the money for him. And then Gleyber Torres, kind of the same exact play as Gio Urshela, so I'll save you the explanation there. Then dropping down to the outfield, Jordan Alvarez, $5,800. If you got the money for him, he's one of the best plays in the entire slate. Definitely one of the top home run calls here versus Eshelman, betting above 300 this season with over a 230 ISO. Don't think I have to explain to you guys that Jordan Alvarez is a good play today. It's just a matter of being able to afford him because he is very, very expensive. And I'm probably going to find myself spending down in the outfield a little bit today, but obviously a great option. If you could play all three Astros outfielders today, I would feel very, very good about that. Gino Martinez, $5,400 if you are stacking the Red Sox. Just some righty and lefty power here versus Danny Duffy. Shohei Ohtani, $5,000, pretty much the best player in baseball these days. Like, the guy has just been absolutely insane. It looked like he hit a fly ball yesterday and it still went out of the stadium. I mean, it's just crazy how good Shohei Ohtani is. $5,000 versus Michael King, pretty average at best. I know the Angels aren't really my top target on offense today. They only have a team total of 4.48, but you can play Ohtani every single day. Like, the guy should be $6,000, and the fact that he's not almost feels like you're getting him at a value. He has an ISO of 373 this season with a 166 WRC plus, over a 640 slugging, and he's batting 270. He will strike out quite a bit, but man, the home run upside that he offers you every single day is absolutely astronomical. Kyle Schwarber, $4,700. He is like the hottest guy in baseball right now. I feel like every single day I see that Kyle Schwarber is either homering once, twice, or even 3 times. It's crazy how hot Kyle Schwarber's been. So I listed him here. Don't think he's an absolute must-play, close to $5,000, and he's definitely going to cool off sometime soon. But the ISO is now above 300 this season, and he has been absolute fire. Kyle Tucker, $4,400. So these next two guys are going to be probably my favorite cash game plays in the entire slate, Kyle Tucker and Michael Brantley, because they're just cheaper exposure to the Astros, and there's no reason Michael Brantley shouldn't be around $5,000. Like, I just don't understand why DraftKings keeps pricing him really low, and also like Cody Bellinger quite a bit. So, I mean, these three guys right in a row actually could be the best cash game outfielders on the slate today because of their price tags. But anyway, before I get ahead of myself, Kyle Tucker, not quite as good as Michael Brantley. It's kind of weird that he's $100 more expensive than him. He has more power upside, 229 ISO this season, but I mean, the guy's just a solid hitter, and I like the power upside here versus Eshelman. Michael Brantley, $4,300. He's going to be the thumbnail of this video. I don't see a reason to fade Michael Brantley here. I mean, just a pure contact hitter with a little bit of pop in his bat. Can always get doubles. Batting 350 this season, 162 ISO, 154 WRC plus. Always makes contact. His strikeout rate's only 11% this season. He's not walking a ton, but he's not striking out. He's going to put the ball in play. So I love Michael Brantley here. Probably my favorite play in the entire slate. Cody Bellinger, $3,900. He's too cheap. He's also been kind of swinging a hot bat recently in terms of just getting DraftKings points. So below 4K, it's going to be kind of tough for me to fade Cody Bellinger. I mean, I don't love picking on Anthony DeSclafani. The guy's not a terrible pitcher, but if you're going to use anybody versus him, I'd prefer the lefty. So at that price point, Bellinger, I think, makes a lot of sense, even though his numbers aren't exactly great this season. Conforto, $3,800. Again, no team total out yet for the Mets, but I don't think it's going to be anything terribly low. And I like the left and righty matchup here versus Michael Conforto. So always had decent power versus right-handed pitching. And then if you need a dirt cheap option, he's also eligible at second base. We have Luis Rengifo here, $2,000. He's absolutely free, and he has been hitting pretty high in the order recently. And he's a switch hitter, so he's always got the platoon advantage. His numbers this season only has a 50 plate appearance sample size, but 152 batting average isn't great. The 152 ISO is not bad for a guy that's $2,000, but I mean, he's free. So if you just need to kind of easing up your salary relief a little bit just to fit in those expensive pitchers, I think he is a viable option. But with that being said, guys, I think that'll be it for the video. So I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Check out the Patreon if you want. You can get these last few days free as long as you continue your patronage throughout July. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Follow me over on social media, and I'll see you guys in the next video.